Okay, in this video we'll be talking about our third and final brush. There are 5 total, but there's just 3 that we're interested in. So first you had calligraphic, which we sort of make from scratch. Second we had the art brush, which takes a single instance of a piece of artwork and stretches it along that path, sort of mocking up a paintbrush or something. So now we're going to take a look at the scatter brush, which is really good for shading. So to do that, I'll head to File and Place. And I'm going to put in spray.png. So this was some spray paint that I sprayed in a piece of paper and scanned. And then I went into Photoshop and I cropped it down into a circle and so forth. This isn't really a Photoshop class, so if you're not sure how to do all that fancy stuff, just do what you can. I can show you some more tricks in class, but we're going to stick to the Illustrator portion. Anyway, so I take spray.png and I place it right here. Even though it was a PNG with a transparent background, you can see that there's still some white creeping in there that I'm going to want to get rid of. So I'll head up to Image Trace, and then by default, I think I have whatever I was using last time. So let's pop into our options here and just make sure we like it. So we can play around with the threshold a little bit if we want to catch some more of those dots. I like jacking the paths all the way to the right, but it generally doesn't seem to have much of an effect with such small details. So you can get in here and kind of do what you will. We do want to keep these as fills, and I do want to ignore white because I just want to get my black elements. Okay, so once we like that, we expand it, and now we have just this little group of semi-random black dots in roughly a circle. Okay, next up we go to, we're going to head to brush, and then instead of basic, I'll hit new. So like we said, covered calligraphic, covered art, and now let's make a scatter brush. So the scatter brush has more options than we're used to. I'm just going to call this spray paint circle. All 4 of these things that we can change in this case, even though we're working with a tablet, I'm going to say let's go with random as opposed to with pressure. And these numbers creep up real quick, so you just want to drag this off a little bit to the left in each case. Just a little bit. You can see that one just jumped to negative 163. So we're setting up the floor and the ceiling for how much variation we'll find in each of these 4 areas. Relative to page or path, that's up to you. And the rest of this I'll just leave alone. So now I'll hit OK. And I can, with the black arrow, just delete this example that we used to make the artwork. So watch this. I'll take my paintbrush, and then I'll draw a line, and you can see that that graphic comes up again and again as it follows my line. This starts to get a little bit hard to see. If I hit Command Y, you can see there's my original path, but then the path with the brush is expressed by these shapes that occur along its length. So for my purposes, these objects are way too sparse, and they're rotating not nearly enough, and so it's really clear that you can see that we just have copies of the same quote semi-random thing over and over again. So the cool thing about this is that now I can bring back up my scatter brush and I can actually manipulate this on the fly. So it looks like we want the spacing to actually be a lot closer together, and we want the size to be a lot smaller. So maybe I'll bring this down to say 120, and you see the size changes. I could even go maybe down, say like 40 to 80 or something, or 90. Okay, now they're really too far apart, so for the spacing, I could bring this guy way down, and this guy way down. We want to get these guys much closer together, although we still can't quite tell because the scatter is so huge. So let's say that the scatter is actually quite small, say negative 10 to positive 10. And that's going to cause these to start to bunch up. Although we can still see, because the rotation is so small, that we have, you know, that little repeating part in the bottom over and over again. So let's actually make the rotation enormous. Let's go negative 180 to positive 180. So now we're really starting to get somewhere. You can see 1 or 2 examples of where a rotation winds up too similar and the sort of digital nature starts to creep out. But that starts to look like a pretty organic little line. And now I can do stuff, for example, like maybe I can allow the size to vary a little bit more. I'll sort of watch that down here. Oh, that starts to get kind of cool. So once I do something like that, you know, I've got a line that really gets some life breathed into it. Maybe there's one or two items that are a little too big for my taste, but you start to get the idea of where this is heading. Okay, so once you get the brush looking pretty good, you may say, well, that's all well and good, but I don't know that I would necessarily draw outlines with that kind of brush. Exactly. And so what we're going to do instead is use this to draw inside a shape. Okay, so let's make that a different video. To be continued.